Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
Don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington. Don't put your daughter on the stage. The profession is overcrowded and the struggle is pretty tough. And admitting the fact she's burning to act, that isn't quite enough.
From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm producer Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post. Star quality, the world of Noël Coward. Susan, Noël Coward was known as the master, one of the giants of the 20th century. Theater, screen, music. We're going to explore the life of Noël Coward today at this wonderful exhibit here.
Exhibition here at the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts at Lincoln Center. It was created by the Noël Coward Foundation in association with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences.
And we're going to be led through the exhibit by Geoffrey Johnson, one of Noël Coward's good friends, and also our friend Barry Day, who is the editor of the Letters of Noël Coward. So come with us as we take a tour through the life of the master.
After you.
I insist, after you, darling.
Darling.
And there they are, the keepers of the Coward flame. Thank you for joining us and giving us a tour of the life of Noël Coward today.
Oh, well, we're happy to be here.
Yeah, I've been living here for weeks.
Yes, we have. We have.
Now, we thought we would start in front of the image, I think, that everyone has of Noël Coward, the elegant silk dressing gown, the slippers embroidered by his friend Merrill Oberon.
Merrill Oberon.
This is the Noël Coward that the world knows.
This is the image that he created.
Yeah.
This is not him. But this is what he became. Right. And so when John Osborne said he's his own best creation, that's what he created.
Right, because we think of him as elegant and rich, but that's not how Noël Coward began.
From a very poor, lower middle class background, his mother took in lodgers. His father was a failed piano salesman, so he dragged himself up by his bootstraps and then climbed even above that.
Did you ever see, Jeff, the poor boy in Noël Coward, or by the time you got to know him, had he really established this character so well that he played it all the time?
To say the poor boy, I'm not sure about that. But the thing I think most people don't know about Noël Coward is that he had a family around him. His really close friends, people he'd worked with, Joyce Carey, Gladys Calthrop, who was his designer for many, many years, Graham Payne, Cole Leslie, Lorne Lorraine. Those people were very important to him.
And you?
He was adopted.
Yeah, I was adopted, in the last 10 years of his life.
He created his own family. They all loved each other and they all traveled in a pack, didn't they?
That's
when
right.
They could.
The very first person who loved him, who really adored him, was his mother Violet, who was kind of a great classic stage mother, right? She's the one who pushed Coward into the business.
Well, she was frustrated because they had no money. She'd take him to all the auditions, and when he was interviewed for his first part, the woman Lila Field, who was going to do the play, said $1.50 guineas a week. And Mrs. Coward said, "Oh, but I can't afford it." She said, "No, dear, that's what he will receive."
But he had a very good relationship with his mother, though.
Oh,
right?
yes.
He really did adore her
yes.
and took care of her and looked
Right.
after her. She wasn't a Mama Rose type figure.
Right. No.
He brought her to America during the war, didn't he, to keep her safe?
Yes. She kept everything. I think we have in the exhibition here the baby book, his first baby book, his drawings, which...
So
His first contract.
Yes.
Oh, right. So she must have had a real belief or a real sense that she was going to make a star out of that.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Well, if he could be a star, that would make her secondary to a star, but she'd be famous. Here he is at the age of 17 in his first film part. D.W. Griffith was making a movie using an English village for a French village, and he gave him the part and covered his face with yellow makeup, pushed the barrow up the hill, and Noël said, "Mr. Griffith, wouldn't it be more effective if I pushed it down the hill?" So Griffith said, "I don't give it either way." But that gave us the first glimpse of Noël Coward on the screen.
That, of course, is Lillian Gish.
Oh, right,
who was
absolutely,
the star of the movie, and they remained friends, until she died. They were always very close.
So Coward begins as an actor. When does he decide to try his hand at writing?
He was working with Esme Wynne in various productions, and she was a writer. She was one of those people who could do nothing but go on and on and on writing. So she said to him, "I know, I've just seen the light in your eye. You're going to try and write too." And he said, "I thought I might try it." And he did.
What playwrights would you say he would have been studying and would have been influenced by at that time?
Somerset Maugham, Shaw, people of that around the Edwardian era coming in.
But it's interesting that he would have been steeped in Shaw and Maugham to some extent, because while their plays were outwardly conventional, the themes and the ideas that they were dealing with were quite subversive for the theater at the time.
It's very hard to know where he got all these things from, because he was not well educated, hardly educated at all.
Yeah.
But from a very early age, he was an omnivorous reader. So he would read these things just to find out how it was done. Yeah. But he had this instinctive sense. I've always thought of him as a kind of a conduit. Things would come at him through the air, through the reading, and he would absorb it all, and then later could express something he probably didn't even know he knew.
Yeah.
Yeah? It's an amazing, that's called genius.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us about The Vortex, which was quite a controversial play at the time.
Well, it's about a drug-addicted son and a nymphomaniac mother. And he wrote the play, and of course, the censors in those days were pretty tough on things. And in the end, he went along to the censor and said, the Lord Chamberlain, it isn't about taking drugs, it's a treatise against drug taking. And when the play actually got on, and they sent the people along to review it for the Lord Chamberlain, the man came back and said, well, if we ban this, we'll have to ban Hamlet, because that was essentially Hamlet and Gertrude.
Son and the mother.
Speaking of writing, he was very fast, wasn't he?
Very fast.
Could you give us an example of a play that he knocked off?
Hay
quickly?
Fever, 4 days, 5 days maximum.
Really?
Blithe Spirit, 4 days. And put on within 2 or 3 months with only one line being changed.
Yeah, very few
He
corrections.
was very proud of that. And he said, my colleague Will took 6 days over Macbeth.
Right.
So what would happen, I guess, that an idea would seize him, a sort of a scheme for a play, and then he could just...
Well, I think that's what I mean by the conduit. He would sit down. Clearly, he'd been thinking about it at some level.
Yeah, yeah.
But when he came to write it, it was fluent.
Did he write every day, Jeff?
He told me before I worked for him that he would wake up early in the morning, have a cup of coffee, have the coffee brought to him, and he would go to his desk or workroom or wherever, and he said, I would force myself to stay there until 2 o'clock, till lunchtime. And he said, sometimes it came very easily, but sometimes I just sat there and I looked at the blank page.
Graham Payne would say, when he'd done the work in the morning, he'd come and say, you must listen to this. This is the most wonderful thing I've ever written.
Yes, yes.
Every day.
When did he begin writing music?
I think he did early on with Esme.
No training as a musician, though, at all.
No,
I mean, no.
Yeah.
No, I've never read any of that, but they couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of tunes, we have here, I believe, possibly his most famous or most popular song, Mad Dogs and Englishmen, which he wrote in 1930, and this is the
Handwritten manuscript
of Mad Dogs and Englishmen.
But the thing about this that's interesting also, he wrote it on a car trip through Malaysia, and he had no paper, no pencil. He put it together in his head, and these are pretty complex rhythms, some of these.
Absolutely.
And then when he got to the guest house, he wrote it down and he played it to his traveling companion, and he said, the tree frogs seemed to appreciate it. And he sang his song on the balcony. It was introduced by B. Lilly in a New York review, and then in the UK the following year.
Did it stop the show? I mean, was it one of those instant hit songs?
I think so.
It also nearly stopped the war, because on a battleship where Roosevelt and Churchill were signing the Atlantic Charter, meetings were over, they went to a private room, and their aides said, we heard a distinct altercation. And when they found out what it wasn't about who was going to win the war or how. It was about the order of the verses in Mad Dogs and Englishmen. and when he got back to England with Churchill said, tell me, dear boy, who was right and who was wrong. And Noel said, I was quite pleased to say, I'm afraid, Prime Minister, the President was right and you were wrong. And Churchill glared at him and said, Whitton can take it.
What do you think of all the songs? It was the biggest hit song. Was it Mad Dogs?
Mad
and Englishmen?
Dogs, Mrs. Worthington, Mad About the Boy.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'll see you again.
But
see you
probably
again.
I'll see you.
I'll see you again.
Well, I mean, you know, when we enter World War II, which is a fascinating period in his life, I'll see you again comes to represent what people experience in war when they go off to fight war.
What they hope, yeah.
And the other big song, of course, was London Pride.
London pride has been handed down to us. London pride is a flower that's free.
So Barry, in the Letters of Noel Coward, which you edited, there's a fascinating section on Noel Coward as a spy during World War II. Can you tell us about that period of his,
Well, he
of
was
his life?
recruited in about 1938 by a man called Robert Vansittart of the Foreign Office, who was pretty sure that war was imminent. A lot of people in the government didn't want to think about that. So he recruited a group of people, including Noel, who would go about doing whatever they normally did, but around Europe particularly, put back to him what they found, what attitudes were, what people were thinking and talking about. Later he did the same thing in the States, and since the States was neutral, he was actually a spy at that point. And he said, I would go around singing my little songs and being a bit of a silly ass, because that's the way it works best. People think, oh, he wouldn't remember anything, he doesn't know. But I'm taking it in, and whether these reports will be any good to anybody, whether they will ever be put together, who knows? But I was just doing what I was told to do and asked to do.
And we should point out, though, while he was in the States, working for the British government as a spy, he was being vilified by the Beaverbrook Press for going around in the safety of the United States doing his songs when London was under attack.
That's right. When he came to put this film together in which we serve, which is basically to do with Mountbatten, all the press were against him. You know, Noel Coward couldn't possibly play a naval officer, and he said, I think I can, and I intend to try. If I find I can't, I'll drop myself out and cast somebody else. But when the thing had finished, a huge success, he was having dinner one evening with David Lean, who directed it with him, Ronald Neame, the cameraman, and Anthony Havelock Allen, the producer. And as he left the table, he was the first to go, he passed some people sitting nearby, and he heard one of them say, I love the film, but I didn't think Coward was quite right. And he stopped by the table, leaned over and said, I thought I was very, very good.
When the storm clouds are riding through a winter sky, sail away.
From the Blitz of London, we suddenly find ourselves in Jamaica, which was Coward's paradise, right?
Right.
Jeff, that's where you spent a great deal of time with him.
Right. First, he had a house down on the sea called Blue Harbor, and then he had too many guests, and he decided he couldn't write, he couldn't be alone, so he bought a section up on the mountain, which he called Firefly. That's where he lived essentially alone with a servant, and everybody would come up for a drink at night, and then either he'd come down for dinner with everybody, and you know.
Tell about that last night, because you were there.
Oh yes, I just happened to be visiting, and Cole Leslie said to me, "Oh, the weather's been so great, it's wonderful, and why do you have to get back to New York the day before I was supposed to leave?" And so I said, "Okay, I'll stay. It's so great," and I stayed, and the next day, Noel died. He had not been in great shape. He was failing a bit, but we had a drink with him, Coley, Graham Payne, and myself the night before he died.
I've always been moved, Geoffrey, by the story about as you left that evening to go down the hill to Blue Harbor, and he said to you all, "Good night, my darlings. I'll see you in the morning."
Right.
And he didn't.
He died in his sleep, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. He essentially got up at some point because I guess he didn't feel well and kind of collapsed in the bathroom.
What did he die of?
It was a combination of a heart attack and what they used to call hardening the arteries. I think, I don't mean, he was
And how old was he?
73.
Terrible smoker, chain smoker.
Did he ever try to quit smoking?
No.
No. That was
That's one of the things he would not do. You know, he said, "I don't want to take exercise, and I don't want to give up smoking. I'll take my chance."
And I don't want to eat vegetables. He was always talking about not eating vegetables.
That's good.
But he did a great deal of painting. He loved to swim. If he didn't come down and swim in the sea, or there was also a saltwater pool down at Blue Harbor, but he decided he wanted a pool up at the top because he did like to swim. And so all the water had to be hauled up to the top of the mountain. It was quite a procedure and very expensive.
And the paintings are really quite wonderful. Again, totally self-taught, right? Barry didn't study art?
He began with watercolors, and then this ubiquitous Mr. Churchill said to him, no, you must not use watercolors, you must go for oils because you can then rub out your mistakes. But you see in the picture there where he's painting, which Geoffrey took, he's wearing gloves because the oil paint eventually made him allergic.
Oh,
so,
I see.
Man with gloves painting.
There's a snapshot of the Queen Mother.
What was his drink of choice in Jamaica? What did Coward have for cocktails? I assume there were cocktails usually if you had to go out for the drink.
He was a bit in that period into bull shots. Do you know what a bull shot is?
Remind me what a bull shot is.
It's vodka and consomme.
Oh yes, right.
Beef bouillon. And they go down very easily. Very nice, very nice.
And look at we have a special cameo appearance by our friend André Bishop, who runs the Lincoln Center Theater. André, you know Barry Day, of course.
Yes, hi, good to see you. Nice to see you.
And you know Jeff Johnson.
André, so good to see you. How are you? How are you?
Now, André, you have donated something that is on display here in the exhibit that belonged to Coward, and
Yes.
Could you point that out for us?
Yes, I have donated this book, leather-bound book signed by Noel Coward, which is in fact not a leather-bound book at all, but a flask. It was the opening night gift for the London production of Bittersweet. He gave it to all members of the cast and signed it. It was sort of, they did his signature in gold. Somebody told me that there's only one other like it in the universe. I don't know if that's true, but I've only heard about one other.
How did you come to acquire it?
Well, I wish I could tell you that, my grandmother was in the chorus of Bittersweet. And
You broke into the chalet in Switzerland and made off with a couple
came
of stuff.
down to me through the ages, but in fact, I saw it in the window of a very lovely, modest antique store in Lexington Avenue and 73rd Street. And it was not an antique store that featured theatrical memorabilia at all. It was mostly crystal and silver pieces. And there was this thing, and I could see Noel Coward on it. And I went in and I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Well, we don't know. We found it someplace." And I said, "Well, I'll buy it." And it was extremely inexpensive. And that was the story of my...
Have you ever used it for what it's intended for?
No, I've never used it.
You've never brought it with you to an opening night to show you're a little unsure about it, Lincoln Center?
No, it is much too small for what I need to drink on opening nights. I polish the brass.
Oh, yes,
with brass polisher. And I polish the leather with leather ointment, and I keep it up.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. Thank you, André. Thank you. That was great. Just to give people a sense of the influence that Coward still has, Cavalcade was the original upstairs, downstairs, and Downton Abbey. I mean, Coward perfected this idea of the high and the low that everyone loves now that Julian Fellowes is doing. Can you give us a little bit of a history of Cavalcade and how he came to write it?
He saw some pictures of the African Boer War, and he thought, that's interesting. Why don't I do a kind of a pageant play? And he wrote this very, very cinematic piece, really. And as you see, it's a cast of zillions.
It's a tremendous cast.
I think André Bishop should do it at Lincoln Center with every single
That's right.
cast member in there.
Right.
That's right.
And Cavalcade was made into a movie that won an Oscar.
It was made into a movie a year later. This came out in 1931.
Yeah.
Then they picked it up for Hollywood because a lady came to see it whose husband was one of the board members of Fox Films. And she said to her husband, "You've got to film this. It's terrific." So he persuaded the rest of his board to buy the rights, but the people who were running Fox couldn't empathize with it.
Too English, probably.
Too English for them, yeah. Don't get all that. No, our audience won't. So they stepped back and they hired an English director, Clive Brook, Diana Wynyard, English. Yeah. So the whole thing was really an English picture, happened to be made in Hollywood. And it took off because it kept the feeling of England intact. So many of the films made of his material before that had really been disastrous. And he was very against the cinema. He said, "I don't like Hollywood, really. I think I'd rather have a nice cup of cocoa."
Barry, there came a period in British drama where the plays of Coward and Radigan and Maugham were kind of swept aside by the angry young man, by John Osborne coming along. How did Coward feel about that? Was he hurt by that? Was he wounded by that?
I'm sure he was. He always claims in the diary that it didn't make any difference to him, but he protested too much. Yes, it really did. And he decided that he would reinvent himself. He said, I will always pop up out of another hole. And the hole he popped up out of this time started in '51, behind you there, when he played at the Café de Paris. And there's the audience with people like James Mason, Bogart, Josephine Baker. He made a big success out of that. And then on one evening, a man came along from America who said, I'm not quite sure what this is all about, but clearly people like it. So he hired him for Las Vegas. And after that, of course, the sky was the limit, because he was picked up by CBS to do live TV specials, made real money that way. And then Frank Sinatra flew all sorts of people in.
All these Hollywood stars now, came from Hollywood to Vegas.
Sinatra would say, if you want to hear our song, should be sung, get the hell to Las Vegas.
Coward, yeah. And did he enjoy Las Vegas? Did he like the desert?
It's a real turning point.
So Coward, though, he kept in touch with the theater as it was changing.
Oh, yes.
And he was a fan of Harold Pinter's and Edward Albee. And we have two fascinating letters here. One from Harold Pinter, thanking Coward for his, I was extremely touched by your telegram on the first night of the homecoming. How very kind of you. So was Coward a fan of Pinter and modern drama and contemporary?
He was not a fan to begin with. He found him obscure.
Yeah.
And then later on with Homecoming, he said, I think I'm on his wavelength now. Because what Pinter was doing is what Coward had been doing for years, which is to use words to hide what you were really saying.
Right.
And so that's the kind of camaraderie that developed out of that. And when he was talking to Albee...
Yes, we have another letter here from Edward Albee, which is a very interesting letter. I think this letter is in the collected letters of Noel Coward.
Well, they all are. Yeah.
And this is after Coward has seen Tiny Alice. And he says, expert use of language is to me a perpetual joy. You use it expertly, all right, but, I fear, too self-indulgently.
He felt Albee was obscure for the sake of being obscure. When Pinter, he felt, understood how the words can hide the real meaning. Yeah. He didn't find the same with Albee.
Now, in 1970, Coward received a special Tony Award, which is his only Tony Award was a special.
Yes,
special Tony
the
Award.
special Tony.
It was a kind of a lifetime achievement award in a sense, wasn't it?
Right.
Given to him by Cary Grant, his old friend.
Yeah.
Here's a little person there. Very
You've
short,
seen that.
very
You've
short
seen
in
that.
those days. He
He's
grew.
like a little gopher type of thing.
I was kneeling at Betty Bacall's feet. When I took him to the Tony Award, I said, well, what are you going to say when you accept your Tony? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. And it was on the Coco set and had that wonderful stairway. And he came down the stairway, and Cary Grant came from the wings, gave him the Tony, and he looked at Cary Grant and he said, this is my first award, so please be kind. And he walked away.
So now we come to the end of Noel Coward's life. What year did he die, Barry?
1973.
1973.
March.
And we have this very interesting poem called When I Have Fears that was written toward the end of his life. Would you mind reading that for us?
Sure. When I have fears, as Keats had fears, of the moment I'll cease to be, I console myself with vanished years, remembered laughter, remembered tears, and the peace of the changing sea, and remembered friends who are dead and gone. How happy they are, I cannot know, but happy am I, who love them so.
And as you said earlier, when asked to sum up his life in one word, that one word was love.
Well, he said, and he was very sincere and very moved, and he said, yes, there is one word, love. To know that you are among people you love, who love you, that has made all the success that much more satisfying. And then he said, and that's it really, that's all.
Well, thank you very, very much for the tour.
Well, it's been great.
Everything owned by your dear friend Noel Coward, Jeff. Thank you so much. And Barry, thanks for your expert insight and analysis in man's life and work.
And thank you.
Mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. The Japanese don't care to, the Chinese wouldn't dare to. Hindus and Argentines sleep firmly from 12 to 1, but Englishmen detesta siesta. In the Philippines they have lovely screens to protect you from the glare. In the Malay states there are hats like plates which the Britishers won't wear. At 12 noon the natives swoon and no further work is done, but mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun.
Barry Day has written this wonderful companion volume to the Treasures of Noel Coward Star Quality. It's got photographs, video, music. It's wonderful for those who haven't seen the exhibition or those who want to relive it.
This program is made possible in part by the Noel Coward Foundation.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theatre Talk for their significant contribution to this production.
Theatre Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theatre Talk. Thank you and good night.